Hello and welcome to the HealthTech Marketing Show. And today we are covering one of my favorite topics, a topic we've covered several times, and we're going to keep covering it until people stop losing interest in it. It's always one of our most popular topics, and that is the subject of AI and marketing. And to help us out with this conversation, I have my great friend, Mr. Casey Meehan. Casey, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm great. It's always great to be back, Adam. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing so well. Always better for seeing you. So before we get into it, I just want to give a thank you to all our listeners for listening. We're definitely building a loyal following, and if you're enjoying the podcast, hey, tell a couple of your friends. You never know; they might thank you for it. I know I will. I also want to give a big thank you to our partners from HIMS who've been long time supporters of the show. They do so much amazing work, and I'm really excited actually to have a buyer study coming out in the next week or so, and you can be sure we're going to be doing a lot of stuff covering that because the buyer journey is something that we know all our audience is very interested in. Well, let's get on to today's topic, which is all about AI. And I think uh, one of the things I want to start with is some research that we recently just completed. And this is some research that we conducted actually a first wave of this research. I call it a wave. It was really just, it's a very short questionnaire on the use of AI in health tech marketing. And so, as I'm sure many people know, we have this wonderful community of about 200 health tech marketers, and we get together a couple of times a month and we'll talk about a topic of their choosing. And AI is always something which is top of the list. And we got together last summer in August, and we had Casey was moderating that, and again we started the session with a quick survey, and we asked them two questions. And the questions were, where are you in your adoption of AI in the way that you use marketing? And then the second question was all about the use cases. So we gave them a long list of use cases like market research, analyzing accounts, creating reports, SEO, creating personalized content emails, creating outlines for blogs, white papers, things like that. And so we got the responses. We had about 25 responses to that back then. And then this January, we asked the same question again. So I'll give you the headlines. I'm going to put a link to a blog post where we actually share the survey down in the show notes. But I thought the thing that was interesting is that when we asked them back in August, the general consensus was that most of the health tech marketing leaders were using AI personally, playing around with it, and some of them were using one or two use cases in their business. Very few had truly operationalized it, and the majority was saying we're still sort of experimenting as a team. When we asked the same question again this January, what they said was still experimenting with it personally, but the majority said we are using it for more than two marketing use cases. So about less than 20% were doing that back in August. Now it's about 40% are saying that they're using it for more than two use cases, and another 25% were using it for one or two marketing use cases. Very few still said that they have a formalized plan in place. I mean, less than 5%, and and one actually said we're not allowed to use AI tools currently, which I thought was interesting. So definitely progress. I would say progress, not perfection, because it's pretty good. 6 months, you've seen a sort of a higher level of adoption, but it's still not cemented into how they use it. The second question was about the use cases, and there really wasn't much change. So the predominant use cases were all about content. So using it for research for content creation, creating outlines for blogs, creating drafts, creating email creation. Probably about 80%, 70 to 80% of the respondents said that they were using it for those use cases, and that really hasn't changed. The only use case where there was any real difference was in market research. So back in August, I think maybe less than 40%, maybe around 30% were using AI for market research. Now nearly 60% are using it for. So I think a lot of that is probably Casey advocating the use of Perplexity. The use of it for video, so about 30% are using it for video editing and production, and that hasn't really changed much. So again, back this story of progress, not perfection. I think the thing which is maybe a little disappointing is that the actual nobody's really using it for things like sales enablement, and the use of it for things like SEO and paid search, which is areas where if you really think about it, you can really start to use AI to do those kinds of things, and we're going to get into that in this discussion. It is kind of a missed opportunity. So hopefully we'll see progress on that next time we do this survey. Maybe we'll do it again later in this year. So what we're going to get into then is talk a little bit about this notion of, I want to hear what Casey thinks about this adoption, and then we're going to dive into some specific use cases. So really some ideas about AI and video content, AI and sales enablement, and all sorts of things like that. Now, before we get into this, not everybody knows who Casey Meehan is. So Casey, tell everybody about yourself, and also tell them about Blazing Zebra and the cool stuff that you're doing. I've been blown away by what you've been doing over the last 6 months. It's really incredible.
Well, I owe a lot of it to you, Adam. You were literally my first paid supporter there in my Patreon. So
I'm the wind beneath your wings, man.
Yeah, indeed. Exactly. So I ran a marketing agency for about 10 years. And in that time, I was really dabbling with AI quite a lot in my spare time and in my private life. So when ChatGPT rolled out and this new AI revolution came to be, I felt the need to pivot and rolled up my agency and began experimenting with AI as much as I could, and tried to teach as many people as I can about it. And since I've run the agency and a couple other businesses over the years, most of what I'm doing is helping people with marketing, systems thinking, all sorts of things with these AI tools. And the main tip of the iceberg of that is my YouTube channel, which is just Blazing Zebra on YouTube. I post one video a week at least, really trying to get some actionable use cases, not just reading whatever the press release is about the hottest new thing, but I really try to get in there and break it apart, figure out what it's good for. If some AI tool is not good, like recently there was a lot of hype around Gemini 2.0, and I couldn't get anything useful out of it, so I didn't cover it. So that's kind of the theme of the channel is really just things that work, not just the hype of the day.
I just want to make a bit of a plug for you, because the videos are so good. They're all sort of about 10 to 15 minutes long, really well structured, very actionable. And I know that if you're like me and you signed up for your Patreon group, which is I think the base level $6 a month. I mean, it's like less than a sandwich, less a couple of cups of coffee, right? You get the instruction. You get like a 3 to 4 page set of instruction sheet on how to do some of the things. Like you did this recent one on the use of Perplexity and how you can use it to automate workflows like sending out personalized emails, which is really good. Really, really good.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to pack as much value in there. The one I'm working on now is 22 pages. And oftentimes, if there are automations that I can include, I include those automation files right in there. So trying to make it sort of an undeniable value to the subscribers.
There's going to be a link down in the show notes for this. I just, you have to. Oh, I'm going to say, I'm not going to say I think you should do it. I'm going to tell you, you need to subscribe to Blazing Zebra. Honestly, you really need to. Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Enough marketing you. Let's get on to the. So what did you think about what you heard? I mean, you've been with this community. You've chatted to this community for a while, and you talk to a lot of different people. What do you think about those results?
They're good. It's interesting. It's not that surprising. The trend that came to mind while you were just talking was the fact that I think it's very hard for management to learn the tool and roll out, sort of an SOP about AI to their team in any sort of a meaningful way. And I see a lot of people approaching it that way, where they're like, we got to figure this out and then train our team. Well, your team's already using it. And I think that, whether you know it or not, they're at home in their work life, they're doing stuff with it. And it seems to me to be best to kind of harness that because they're in doing their job day in and day out, where you're not doing it, because a lot of managers don't even really get around to figuring out how to use it, and they don't roll it out and so forth. So I think maybe a better strategy is to set some guardrails, like what tool are we going to use? What are we not going to put in it? Every company's different with the amount of risk that they want to take with these tools. I tend to think that the frontier models, the ChatGPTs of the world, are not that risky to put any sort of information in. I wouldn't put in, any hardcore financials maybe, or any, information about your customers' emails and social security numbers and things like that. But marketing strategy, things like this, I think should be pretty open. But anyway, figure out what your guardrails are. And I've talked to a lot of companies that, like you mentioned, somebody said they don't use it at all. And people's, their legal teams are not allowing them to use it at all. And they're thinking that they're avoiding risk in doing that, but they're actually not seeing a major risk in not using these tools and not allowing your team to do it. Is that, you're just going to get bowled over by the competition. Your team is going to be using it without telling you. And that is probably worse than, having them use it under your supervision. But anyway, giving them access to the tools and allowing them to just experiment with it, maybe setting aside an hour a week. So maybe it's like Friday mornings, not always the most productive time around the office, but maybe say from 9 to 10 on Friday mornings, we're all going to experiment, try something new with AI, try to get it to do something that we haven't ever done before and improve our job in that way. Then on a quarterly basis, you can round everybody up for a showcase and say, okay, you've had 12 weeks to experiment with this. What have you done with that? And everyone can then share what they've learned, what's worked, what's not working, any, issues they've had, and everyone can sort of learn to adopt these tools together, rather than thinking that, one manager is going to figure it out, pass off that workflow. By the time they do that, there's a new tool out that, makes whatever they've created, obsolete. So that's just, I think my main thought is really just coaching your team on starting to experiment with the tools, rather than trying to have a heavy hand in exactly the workflows.
Interesting. So one of the issues that I struggle with a lot, because clients ask me about this, and I'm never really sure what the right answer is that if you take information that is confidential, maybe it's information about your own company or information about that your client has given you, and you upload it into ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude, does it remain?
So yeah, that's a complicated question, because even within ChatGPT, depending on the level of payment that you're at, that varies. So if you're doing it free, if you're just using it free, then they're training on your data. They're going to be using that, and they could be doing whatever with it. But if you're paying for it and you have that training switch turned off in the settings, then it should be locked down and not available to anybody in the future there. So then there's even other like really extreme levels of privacy for like HIPAA compliant stuff where you need the enterprise level. So that's a little bit of research that you need to do on your own, figuring that out, what level of privacy you need. But with a Teams account and the training turned off, you should be pretty good to go, assuming you're not using HIPAA, stuff or really confidential.
That's with ChatGPT, I take it.
That's for ChatGPT, and each one kind of has its own rules, and they're changing all the time too. So no matter what we say here, you got to look into it for yourself and kind of figure out what level you're comfortable with.
Yeah, one of the applications that you got me excited about 6 months or so ago, and it's honestly still my favorite application, is Notebook LM. And Notebook LM is Google product. It's free, and the way that we use it is for analyzing it around, analyzing data for a specific set of information. So, for example, actually next week we've got a new podcast episode coming out called the four HealthTech marketing personas. And the way that we created those was that we used 20-something hours of conversations with the HealthTech Marketing Network, one-on-one conversations, and we analyzed that all with HealthTech marketing people talking about their issues, talking about how they do what they do. And we used Notebook LM to analyze the different persona types and then create what those personas were. It was just insanely brilliant in doing it.
Yeah.
And in that case, so I've kind of limited the who was allowed, what information was being analyzed. So is that, if we use Notebook LM, does that automatically limit the exposure of that data, do you think?
You'd have to look into the details. I think that it does if you're logged in there. Again, it is changing all the time, and that's a Google product. They're a little more notorious to be a little fuzzy around the edges of what you're loading in and so forth. But I think it's also in their best interest that they're not going to share that data with the world. So if you're using Google Docs and Google Sheets for that information, I would put it about at the same level of risk there. Like they already have access to all of that stuff, and you've clicked a thing saying that they have, certain access to that. So it's interesting to hear people, up in arms about AI security, and they're using everything in Google Docs. Well,
what a great point. I'm actually using PDFs to do that, and recordings, so audio recordings. Okay, let's move on from this topic. But it's just, I think that the takeaway is these applications allow you to protect your data, and you're trusting that what they're telling you is true.
Right.
But there's still an element of doubt to it.
There have been leaks. I mean, the same way there's data breaches all day long with everything. So, it's something you got to look into. And I would say, it really is. It's such a major topic of discussion on calls like this that I'm on. It's on every single call, but I don't hear a whole lot of people that are saying, "Oh, all my information got leaked, and my strategies are out there." And I don't, there was maybe one of those 6, 7, 8 months ago, but it's more of it's not really something I think about quite a lot. Honestly.
Okay. All right. So I want to move on to some actionable advice and things that people listening to this can take away and start doing. And I feel that a lot of people, and I'm certainly one of these, you find a use case and you find an application that you're absolutely in love with, and you just keep doing that. And somebody said, I was talking to somebody today, and they said, you know what, I think the AI, it's a bit like Google. And I said, well, actually, it's not really, because the thing with Google is it does one thing really, really well. And so you use Google and it becomes habit forming. And you can find other uses of Google, but primarily use Google for searching, right? For navigating the internet. With all these different tools, there's so much more that you can do. And so I think a lot of this is about breaking of the rut, getting people to break the rut, to try push themselves to try new things. You are amazing at that. So let's just do 2 or 3 things that people can do. And I want to start with video. So what are some of the ways that people listening to this should be thinking about the use of AI and video?
So I think that with video, there is a lot of interesting things happening with the, people just creating videos from text. So when you say video, and when a lot of people think of AI for video, it's you type in a prompt and you get a short video snippet around that prompt from tools like Runway ML has been a leader in that space for a long time. OpenAI's version is called Sora, which, is okay. Didn't really live up to the hype. There's one that Google's about to roll out that looks really unbelievable, which is called VEO. That's not publicly available yet, but it looks kind of head and shoulders better than the others.
What are these two?
This would be just what would be a text to video. So you type in a prompt and it would create, a short snippet around that prompt. So, the CES show, Consumer Electronics Show, just happened in Vegas, and a couple of people that had access to this VO were creating some pretty funny fictional things that were rolled out at CES. So they had like a robot flying above, the trade show, and it looked completely real, but it was all AI generated. So those are the tools that get a lot of the hype when it comes to AI video. But I think, a lot of people on this listening to this are probably B2B marketers, and
Yes.
those may not be the best use cases. So I would really point people to Descript. If you haven't experimented with Descript, it is a very powerful AI video editor. So you can, record, maybe you're at an event, you're recording testimonials with your iPhone. I had no idea until recently that your iPhone can record in 4K. There's a setting in there where you can flip it to 4K and you're getting super high resolution video that you can load right into Descript. And we obviously don't have time for a detailed guide on Descript, but it makes it very easy to edit that video. And it has all sorts of powerful AI tools that can be really helpful. You can think of Descript as sort of like how Canva is to Photoshop. Descript is that to like a Final Cut Pro. So if you're just, a marketer, then video is just one of the many things on your list. Descript is going to be the tool for you. If you're really just a video person, then you're probably going to be in a Premiere or something like that. But you can chain Descript together with a bunch of the other AI tools. And this is a workflow that I really like. I want to talk a little bit about these advanced reasoning models here in a second, ChatGPT o1 and DeepSeek, which is getting a lot of hype. One of the main benefits of these is that they can create pretty long form content. So your traditional AI LLMs like ChatGPT 4o, they top out at about 600, 700, 800 words in their responses. But these new tools, especially the ChatGPT o1 Pro, if you pay that $200 a month, you can get it to generate a very beautiful long form piece of content. And, when I say that, a lot of people think, oh, it must be just garbage, but it's actually pretty fantastic. Obviously, it depends on how you prompt it. But you can create like a 4,000 word essay on something. You can load those reasoning tools up with tons of information. And you can then go to 11 Labs and create a 30, 45 minute voiceover. So 11 Labs is a text to speech model. It's the leading one in that area. And with a paid subscription, you can take your long essay and generate a long audio clip there, which then you can pull into Descript for a 20, 30-minute video. Inside of Descript, you can pull in all sorts of stock footage. So you can think of sort of a Ken Burns style video rather than, a video of people talking. It's a nice, audio essay with some visuals. You can include slides or whatever. That, I think, is a much more powerful video workflow than some of the other AI, tools that are getting a lot of the buzz.
I saw you demonstrate this end to end, and it was remarkable.
Awesome.
And it's also so quick too. I mean, it's
Right.
extraordinary. I just, from a practical standpoint, the way I'm not using it in the joined up way that you do it, and this is something which I love that you're doing very much in the videos that you use, is how to actually integrate these different tools. But just a couple of use cases. There's some simple ways to get started, like with Descript. With this, with audio things like this, I say a lot of ums and ohs and so's and and all that kind of thing. And my editor will use the script just to sort of like you can just get rid of the filler words.
Yeah,
and
one button.
One button. It does it seamlessly. It's amazing, and that's just a basic thing. And if you want to put, if you want to create a simple little, reel or a LinkedIn narrow, LinkedIn video, you want to have subtitles underneath it, closed caption, you can just pull that in, and it does it automatically. And what's so great is you use the text from the transcript to do the editing. It is just beautiful in the way it works. I'm using 11 Labs with some of the top blog posts. So what I've started to do is take our highest performing blog posts, and I've used Claude to take the blog posts and turn those into a narrative, because if you read them out, it sounds like you're reading a blog post. It doesn't sound like you're reading it's not a narrative. So created a short narrative and then imported those into 11 Labs with a voice that sort of sounds like mine. And
I know the one.
Yeah, there you go. And it does a brilliant job. I mean, the emphasis, when it's reading, the emphasis is still a bit AI-ish, but it's pretty damn good. So those are just some simple ways to use it.
And if you wanted to get advanced with it, so if it was a piece that you were really, interested in, you can control all of that stuff in there. So you can go back into one sentence or one word and say, put some emphasis on this. You can control it, how it performs that more than ever before. And you can even train it on your own voice. So just with reading a bunch of text in, you can train 11 Labs on that. And that's another cool thing about Descript is you can train it on your voice. So when I'm recording my videos, sometimes with all these AI names and tools, I'll say 01 when I meant, 40. And, I can just go into Descript and it has an AI version of my voice. And I can just change it. And in the video and in the audio, it will change it to me saying the correct word, which is really nice.
It's incredible. Okay, so that's great. That's some really good, handy advice on video. Let's move on to talk about sales enablement. I feel that this is an area where, as marketing shifts to more of an ABM model, and that handover from identifying high opportunity accounts and transitioning into sales, I think there's a real opportunity to use AI for sales enablement to help the salespeople do things like personalized emails, for example. Right. What's some of the things from a sales enablement thing that maybe people should be thinking about?
Sure. So one of my favorite ways to chain tools together usually starts with Perplexity. So going out and doing Perplexity, which if you're unfamiliar with Perplexity, it is, Google search on steroids. You put in one request and it goes out and does about 50 different searches, compiles it all into a nice, fully cited AI response. And the workflow that I've been promoting for years now, I guess over a year, is doing your research with Perplexity. And then you can pull that into, Notebook LM sometimes to analyze the research. And then you can pull that analysis into a ChatGPT, either the large O1 reasoning model, if you're going to create something long form, or if it's just a short form blog or a piece of social media, it's probably better to use the 4.0 model, which is the one that most people are used to. But the big change that has happened recently is you can now, before I go on, a lot of people might say, can I do all that just right in ChatGPT? And yeah, you can, but it won't be nearly as good because the search is not as good as Perplexity. The analysis is not as good as Notebook LM. So by chaining those tools together, if it's something important, it's well worth the effort. The thing that's changed recently is that Perplexity now allows you to do those searches with its API. So you can automate that. So almost everything else was automatable, but I always had to manually go to Perplexity and do that search and then copy that in to an automation that would then do everything else downstream. Now you can do that all in the API. So there's a tool called make.com, which I really recommend for anything related to automations. It's a little tricky to get started, but you can you can go in there and play around with just the Perplexity module. So Perplexity going out and doing a search, maybe it's on a key account, could be a client of yours or a prospect or whatever. You can automate that to run on a weekly basis. What's the update with, Health Launchpad? What did Adam post online this week that I can then, flag and look at? So that can automatically happen where that's generating a Google Doc once a week for each of your key accounts. You can just look at that automatically. You can take it one step further where it then shapes that research. You can use a ChatGPT module inside of make.com, which will take that Perplexity research, format it into an email, in your style and tone. And there's some art and science to how that's done. And then drop that right into your Google Drafts. So you wake up on Monday morning, all your key accounts, you have drafts about things that they've done that week or things that they might be interested in that you can review. So it doesn't send it right out because you're always going to need to edit it. But it gets you like 80-90% of the way there where you can just tweak it, edit it. And if nothing really happened that week, you can always delete it and it'll happen the next week. But I think that's a great sales enablement workflow to just stay in touch with your, key stakeholders. This could even be used internally, things your team needs to know about, things you want your management to know about. It's like a really smart Google alert that actually works, so.
You're on your Blazing Zebra channel. You've got a wonderful video on how you do that. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes because it is cool. It's a level of complexity that is a little intimidating. And honestly, I'm relatively facile from a tech perspective, but I don't have any technical training. And I've sort of I don't know if I'm going to do that right now. But I've got a guy on my team who's actually was a software developer. And so I've sort of said, okay, I want you to figure out how we can start doing that for ourselves and for clients, because I believe it's really important.
Yeah, empowering your team with these tools is the way to go. I've started doing that and it has been just insane. Just every little thing that, they were coming to me and asking me about, it's like, well, hit up ChatGPT first or hit up Perplexity first. And then, if you still have a question, let me know. But I mean, it can really escalate. And when they have free time, you can just say, hey, use ChatGPT to learn XYZ new skill. And, I have a whole video all on learning any skill that is great, to roll out to your team when they have some spare time. They can work on learning to be a better video editor with Descript, or learning how to use animations inside of Canva, and just getting better and better at all these tools.
So you mentioned advanced AI models, and you mentioned
DeepSeek.
I was going to call it Deep Secret, which is definitely not a deep secret. And you also mentioned ChatGPT 4.01 model. What's the deal?
Yes. So this is the hype right now, DeepSeek, and I'm just wrapping up a video on this one. And it is a new model that was released by a Chinese company. And this is really forcing the issue of this reasoning model. So OpenAI released this 01 model. They had a preview version a few months ago, and then they rolled out the actual model like in December. And many people did not understand how to use this thing because it's one step more advanced than your regular ChatGPT 4.0, which, if you think of your normal AI, that is very good at a question and answer. You ask it a question, it gives you an answer. And that question might be, hey, create me a cool social media post about XYZ, or create a short blog post or something like that. And it does that type of thing very well. And that's the type of thing you want to keep doing with those models. But if you want to create long form content like we talked about, or if you want to start to build systems and processes, doing deeper analysis, those are the types of things that these reasoning models do very well. So there's ChatGPT 01 and then this new DeepSeek, which are reasoning models. And you can actually see them thinking. They take a while to respond. So if there's like a complex problem, or if you just have a lot of information that you want to put in there, these are the best models to use. So If you're creating like a standard operating procedure, SOPs, this would be a great use case for it, because that O1 model would really excel at that much better than
give an example of that.
So the example in the video I made, one of my family members is thinking about starting a food truck business. So I asked it to create an SOP for getting the food truck ready for a festival. And it went through and created a probably 5-6 page document about who does what on what day, checking, checklists, just like all sorts of things that, we would need to get the food truck ready for that business. Okay. Another example, I really like this, like you mentioned with your personas. So, you do your research in Perplexity, or you gather a lot of transcripts, you have a bunch of information, you load that into Notebook LM, you do your analysis inside of Notebook LM, because that is grounded in only the information that you've given it. Then you take a bunch of those notes, all of the different things that you found there, and put that into this O1 model. And you then see what the strategy it comes up with is going to be far better than a ChatGPT 4.0. And these models are helping people solve like PhD level problems. So
I see.
They're more advanced in that way. And DeepSeek is sort of forcing this conversation, because nobody really was paying attention to that O1. But now that this Chinese company has released this for free, and it is almost as good as ChatGPT O1, I still think O1 is better for most things. DeepSeek, for sure, I want to stress there's privacy issues with that one above and beyond anything else. So, the conversation we had at the beginning, DeepSeek is one that for sure you want to be careful what you put in there. Anything you put in there, you might as well be putting out on the internet, for everyone to see. It's still valuable because it's a free tool. And, if you want your team to play around with it and they have good understanding of what they can use it for, then it's fine. But it also has less guardrails, which is interesting. So, ChatGPT is under a lot of scrutiny from copyright, and a lot of it rightly so, but scrutiny from different areas, that they've put up a bunch of guardrails that didn't used to be there in the very early days of it. These don't exist quite so much on DeepSeek. So I was able to create some very humorous stuff with it, much more than, ChatGPT typically fails miserably at jokes. And I asked it to create a new bit for Richard Pryor's Live on the Sunset Strip classic, stand-up routine. And it created the funniest thing by far that any AI has ever come up with. So it's kind of cool to have one that's not so, guardrailed up.
Yeah, it's a bit like, it sounds like I'm asking Alexa to give me a joke or a dad joke, and every single one is just terrible. It sounds like DeepSeek has actually may have cracked that. That's good. That's real advanced. Now we know it's
exactly working. It's got that sense of humor. The other cool thing about it is you can see its thought process. So you can see it thinking to itself in great detail. The O1 model, you can see it a little bit, but not super clearly. In the DeepSeek, you can see exactly what it's thinking through. And this is the first time that I'm like, man, this thing kind of seems like it's alive. It was one of those moments of, this is really, it's just how a person would solve a problem. And it's also useful. So you can see if it goes off the rails, it doesn't solve your problem right. You can look back in that history and see where it might have missed the mark and understand it in a different way there.
Well, and then you can probably adjust the prompt accordingly, right?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. And I've been trying out, I've been testing out sort of the different tools that I use, and giving it the same prompt. And so, for example, I did a bit of coaching, and I asked the person who's coaching to send me what's on their mind right now. And then I asked, scrub the names so that, if I'm putting it into these AI tools, nobody know who it was. And then I said, what advice would you give me so I can give this person some good advice? And I did it. I tested Claude and I tested Perplexity. Claude's always my go-to. I found that Claude wrote a beautifully written one, but it wasn't anywhere near as good as Perplexity.
Interesting.
What I'm taking away from this is that if I was to use the ChatGPT o1 model, it would be a whole other level. It would give me a sort
I
of
think
like
so.
almost like a sort of like the next level of, which is very interesting. I think for helping managers of teams figure out how to standardize the use of AI tools or the use of different marketing workflows, it sounds like that's where this can come into its own, for actually creating, here's the instruction guide on how to do it, and then updating it as you learn new stuff.
Yeah, I think so. Any sort of process, systems thinking, management, documentation, investing or how to deploy capital. So those strategies, if you've got a budget that you're trying to figure out how to best spend it, using that thinking brain is a much better way than just getting that quick response from ChatGPT. And I got to say, I pay for that $200 level, the o1 Pro, and it's phenomenal. Like, I can't live without it, and it sounds expensive at $200 a month, but when you think about it, I mean, it's worth an employee to me. It's worth, like I used to pay that much for an SEO tool that I used barely at all. So, I mean, it's a powerful tool, and now they're rolling out Operator. So I don't know if you've had a chance to play with this, Adam, but Operator, there's been a lot of talk about these agents, and there's a lot of definitions to the AI agent. The definition that I promote is that an agent is an AI model that can go out and do stuff in the world other than just look at text and reconfigure words in certain ways or voice, but can actually go out and operate a website or, do something else with your tech stack. And in that Pro $200 level, since DeepSeek has gotten all the hype recently, this has been under the radar, but this tool is mind-blowing. It's by far more impressive than the DeepSeek, is that this ChatGPT, OpenAI's Operator, can now go out and manipulate any website. So I can say, go search the web, gather resources, put them into a spreadsheet, get transcripts from YouTube videos, load those into Notebook LM, do analysis on it. And it does all of this stuff. And it's wild. You can just watch it go through thinking. Sometimes it gets stuck, but it's actually working for the first time. And I was really skeptical if these agents were going to ever work, because everybody's been waiting for it right around the corner for 2 years now. I was like, there's something here that it maybe is not going to happen. And I'm changing my tune on that with this advent of this ChatGPT Operator, which is available only at that $200 level. So take a look at that. It's really powerful.
You've changed my mind. So I don't know, when I first got the Gen AI bug, and I started using ChatGPT, and then I started using Claude, and I thought, ChatGPT sucks. And so I obsessively use Claude, and now I've broadened those to use Perplexity. I think you've given me a reason to go back to ChatGPT.
You should. Yeah, I've been going back that way as well. Claude is still good for some of the creative stuff that it can come up with, like taglines, or just how to maybe title headlines and things like this. It's got a very good creative brain that I think ChatGPT still is more analytical, if that makes any sense. But Claude's been frustrating to me because oftentimes it'll start making code when I'm not even talking about anything code. I don't know if you've had that experience, but I've asked it for maybe copy for a landing page, and it's like, I'll create a whole landing page inside of React. And I'm like, no, I don't need you to create the code of the landing page. I just need the headlines and the stuff that you're good at.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
You're developing a little sort of insecurity there. To over deliver.
There was about a month where it apologized profusely all the time, and it was like, kind of felt bad for this thing. You're like, it's okay, it's all right, just do better.
I still love you.
Exactly.
Any other tips? Any other tools that we should be thinking about coming down? Anything sort of trends or things that you're looking at? I mean, you've certainly hit on things that are way beyond what I've been looking at. So, but any other, maybe video tools or something like that?
Yeah, so the video tools we hit on, I use Canva a lot. There's just so much you can do between Descript and Canva. I think if you have any sort of an inkling to experiment with code, there is a tool called Replit, Replit, and you can, inside of one of these, these advanced models, the O1 or the DeepSeek, you can ask it to create code that I can run inside of Replit for very basic things. So I created myself a little very basic CRM. I just wanted kind of a database for people's names. I didn't need all the, shenanigans that come along with a lot of these tools. And I said, hey, create a basic CRM that I can deploy inside of Replit. And it created all the code, and it created the instructions of exactly where to copy and paste that code. I just, it was like an IKEA piece of furniture. I just, popped it together, and I have this now custom CRM that I can then, I can plug it into my Google Sheets if I want that, or I can start to, use it in different ways. So that type of thing is really exciting to me, because so many of these tools, like Salesforce and other, I guess I don't want to name too many names, but they've gotten so fancy and over the top that it's like impossible to use, especially when it comes to their AI stuff, which a lot of people are, trying to use this, how do I use this XYZ tools AI, HubSpot's AI, this and that. And the short answer is don't. I think just stick with those frontier models, the ones that we've been discussing, and get the most out of those. Even Replit, like it has this whole AI thing inside, and there are some useful things for that, but it's not always cracked up to be what you think it is. So if you're having trouble using AI inside of a tool, it's probably not you. It's probably that tool is just a little bit half baked.
Okay, as we wrap things up, any closing advice for the listener out there? Hopefully, listeners. Maybe there's more than one person listening to this. Any closing advice on how they can move beyond experimentation to sort of practical AI implementation across the team?
Yeah, I think just going back to what I said at the top of the call, they need access to the tools. They need some basic, clear guidelines on what's allowed and what's not allowed. And I would hedge on the side of like, don't put social security numbers in there, but, any sort of marketing strategy and copy, obviously, I think, is going to be fine. And so they have access to the tools, have some instructions, and then they have to have the time to do it. They can't do this on top of all the other stuff that they're doing. It's just like saying, while you're running a race, learn how to, hula hoop or something like that. It's like, give them a little bit of time where they're focused on it, and then have that showcase, that quarterly showcase. Here's what we did. The first one, there's maybe no assignments given, but that sets the baseline. It's like, okay, and we've been able to use it for this. We've been able to use it for whatever, our social media copy. What's next? Can we use it for a blog? Can we use it for a long form piece of content? Can we take our old pieces of content and interviews and things and start to figure out workflows where we're making content that's 10 times better, 4 or 5 times faster, and sometimes more enjoyable to make at the same time.
So actually one other thing I want to tell everybody out there is that we created a 10 best practices on how to operationalize AI across your marketing team. And there's a link to that document down in the show notes. And that's something that Casey contributed to. We actually, what we did is we had a couple of 2 hours of conversations with the HealthTech Marketing Network that Casey facilitated. And I used AI to create that. So I can't remember which tool I used, but probably a combination of Notebook LM and Claude to write that. And then we've designed the piece out. It's very simple. It's just, it's a very simple, actionable list of things that you can do, including the topics the ideas that Casey just talked about. Casey, thank you. Always mind-blowing. I always walk away with 6 things I need to go do this weekend. Curse you. I had other plans, but apparently not anymore.
Nah.
And I really do appreciate, the way that you share everything that you're learning and do it in a way which is so practical. Again, the way to reach Casey is go to YouTube, search Blazing Zebra, and you can also from there link through to his Patreon account, and you can get access to all of his sort of guides, and you can join his communities and do all that sort of stuff. And trust me, you want to do this. It's really, really worth it. I do it, and I get so much out of it.
I
And so,
appreciate that. Yeah, it's always a pleasure working with your group here. It really, some of the most pleasurable moments I've had. You know, I've worked and engaged with you in many ways. This is definitely a special community. So that is coming from the heart. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Casey. And thank you again to our sponsors and supporters from HIMSS. And thank you to you for listening. And if you want to watch us, there's a blog post. You go to healthlaunchpad.com. You'll see the blog post where you can watch the video and you can read the notes and access all the various resources. And if you're watching this and you wanted to actually subscribe to it, you can subscribe to this. Hit the subscribe button on whatever your favorite podcast application is, or hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and you'll keep getting these. Join the millions of people, well, hundreds of people who listen to this podcast on a regular basis. So with that, I will say thank you again, Casey.
My pleasure.
And bid everybody a farewell.